Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you. As we have international representation on the panel, and I'm pretty sure in the audience as well. So I wanted to extend my wishes to all of you. I would like to extend a warm welcome to all of you on behalf of Jindal School of Environment and Sustainability and OP Jindal Global University on World Environment Day. The theme of today's webinar is Environment of Millennials. Just to brief all of you on today's webinar, I will introduce the topic briefly and introduce all the speakers. Then our speakers will share their experience and journey. Towards the end, we will have a Q&A session. This webinar is organized at a time when the whole world is shut down due to outbreak of COVID-19. As we are battling this crisis today, it is important to think about other crises which have been having an adverse impact on us, that is climate change and global warming. The climate crisis is the largest threat to every single person and living thing on this planet. Since climate change disrupts the basic necessities of life, shelter, food, water, it is regarded as the biggest global human health threat of the 21st century. And the most vulnerable of climate change impacts are children and youth, with the WHO estimating that children will suffer more than 80% of the illnesses, injuries, and deaths attributable to it. And this will become more prevalent with warmer temperature and changing rainfall patterns. Nearly 160 million children live in areas of high or extremely high drought severity. Around 530 million children live in areas that are extremely prone to floods, and the vast majority being in Asia. In 2012, an estimated 3.7 million deaths worldwide were attributed to ambient air pollution, and out of that, 3% of these deaths were of children under the age of 5. Children under 12 months are the most vulnerable, and not just in countries around the equator, but also in many temperate climates. Infants and small children are more likely to die or suffer from heat stroke because they are unable to regulate their body temperatures and control their surrounding environments. So basically, what this shows us, this clearly shows that the principle of intergenerational equity hasn't been followed at all by the countries around the globe. It is obvious that the action of past and today's decision makers on climate change and other environmental threats will affect generation to come. And maybe that's why the youth is out on the street participating in the climate strike, or standing in the courtroom fighting for future generations' right, or sitting outside their parliaments. Millennials are 2.3 billion in number, making up around 30% of the world's population. And this number is increasing. Millennials are the first generation to have grown up in a world where climate change is part of their daily dialogues. A generation where many feels as though they have no choice but to actively engage to drive change. Climate change activism is not new. Of course, it started in 1970s, but the role of youth in it today definitely is. Today's youth reject the idea that they are junior auxiliaries to adult movements, and they challenge the traditional rule of older people over the young, and most radically of all, uphold the interests of future generation as equal to those of present ones. Most of the climate litigation around the world is driven by youth, including India, USA, Canada, Netherlands, Colombia, Pakistan, and elsewhere. Indisputably, Greta Thunberg is an exemplary leader, inspiring thousands of youth worldwide to walk out of class every Friday to protest climate disaster, and bringing attention to the global climate strike in 2019, in which 4 million people participated. Of course, if Greta can do it, why not children from around the world can do the same? All over the world, whether big cities or small villages, developed or still developing countries, global power or tiny island nations, young people are mobilizing and marching in climate strikes everywhere. Beyond that, young people are starting their own organizations and innovating greener everyday living practices, all in the name of addressing climate change and renewable energy solutions. Today, I have with me four climate activists and advocates living very different realities around the world, but all making climate action a central purpose in their lives. Let me begin by introducing Yugratna Srivastava, 24-year-old from India, an engineer by education. Yuritna has been involved in climate and environmental protection since a very young age. She is currently elected Global Focal Point for Youth Constituencies (UNEP), where she coordinates youth engagement in environmental governance. She also works as international coordination and policy advocacy for Plant for the Planet NGO. She led Youth for NDC during 2019. She also coordinated Global South Scholarship since COP23 in 2017. She has been a youth delegate from AOSIS in past UNFCCC sessions and also part of the official COP23 Fijian presidency delegation in 2018. In fact, today she is going to moderate a youth dialogue with Environmental Minister of Norway and Deputy Executive Director UNEP at Youth Environment Assembly, UNEP Major Group for Children and Youth. So she will not be here with us for the whole session, but of course, thank you for joining, Yugratna. Then the next panelist we have Radhima Pandey, a 12-year-old youth environmental activist from India. She is studying in class 9th in Haridwar, Uttarakhand. She sued the Indian government in March 2017 at the NGT because of government's inaction in tackling climate change issues in India. And the Indian government's policies and laws were not enough to mitigate climate change and keep to the limits set by the Paris Agreement. She attended an international conference organized by Oliveira in Paris as a speaker in November 2017. She also joined Greta Thunberg on September 20 in her global climate strike in Manhattan, New York. She is with other 15 teenagers who have filed a complaint against 5 countries, namely Argentina, Turkey, Germany, France, and Brazil at the United Nations for not doing enough to stop climate change through the third optional protocol to the Convention on the Rights of the Child. She has also participated in international events as a speaker, Zinteo in Norway, Global Forum on Childhood Pneumonia in Barcelona, Spain, and presently she is spreading awareness in different cities and schools of India to inspire others to protect our environment. Thank you for joining, Radhima. And then we have Kasia Oliveira Morais. She is the founder and CEO of Youth Climate Leader, a social enterprise that trains and connects young people with networks and opportunities to start their career as a climate leader. Kasia has experience working on sustainable development and international cooperations in the public, private, and third sector. Previously, she has served as Deputy Executive Coordinator at the Brazilian Forum on Climate Change and also worked as consultant at Civicus UNDP and the UN Sustainable Development Solution Network. She holds an MPA in Development, a practice degree from Columbia University. YCL won the 2017 MIT Climate Co-Lab contest, and Kasia had the honor of presenting the YCL initiative on a private meeting with President Barack Obama during his visit to Sao Paulo in 2017. YCL has already trained 120 young people from 20 countries and 4 continents, reaching more than 1 million people through social media only in the first semester of 2019. Thank you for joining, Kasia. And shortly, the other speaker we have is Lisibriya Kangusam. She's already in another webinar session, so she's going to join us a little late. However, I'm going to introduce her. She's 8-year-old Indian climate activist and founder of the Child Movement, and also youngest green activist in the world since the 6 years old. She's also known for her voice for the need for immediate action to combat climate change. She dropped out of her school in February 2019 to protest every week in front of the Parliament House of India to pass a climate law in the Parliament by addressing the Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Member of Parliament. She is the youngest speaker at the United Nations in the history of the world. She traveled over 32 countries as a part of her movement. Now, at this young age, she has already won World Children Peace Prize Laureates 2019, Rising Star of the Earth Day Network 2019, SDGs Ambassador Award 2019, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam Children Award 2019, Indian Peace Prize 2019, Noble Citizen Award 2020, and Global Child Prodigy Award 2020. Now I will request Yugratna to start the session.
Thank you very much, Harsh. Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Harsh, for that beautiful introduction, and a very happy World Environment Day to everyone who is listening and joining in today. It's such an honor to be with all of you here, and certainly, as you mentioned in your introduction, Harsh, I mean, this is the time when young people are taking on to streets and protesting for the rights. And as we are in the World Environment Day today, this is historic, at least for people of my generation and the current generation that are facing this in middle of a pandemic. I cannot recall, at least in my lifetime, of World Environment Day where we were going through a global health crisis at the same time, and there were no physical events happening. Young people all over the world, governments, UN agencies, think tanks, everyone is organizing mobilization, which is digital in nature and which is done through all of these social media platforms and um, webinars and many other online campaigns. I would like to start by offering more of a perspective from where we are at the moment in terms of climate crisis, or if you look at the broader framework of UN and where it stands when environmental governance aspects come into a place. So as you may know, climate change, by the nature of the issue that it is, it empowers, or it is for young people a matter of intergenerational equity. It's a matter of justice. Those that have contributed least to the problems of climate change are the ones facing the maximum impacts, whether that means young people that are living in the small island developing states, young people living in developing countries, those on the frontline communities, and those that often do not even have resources to solve those problems or even to understand them. And there are many layers to this, and in order to tackle this, UN in 1992 created three sort of conventions of Rio conventions on climate change, biodiversity, and desertification. And 25 years down the line, last year they celebrated 25th anniversary of the Rio conventions. The climate emissions are only going up. There has been significant lack of progress, whether it comes to mitigation, whether it comes to adaptation, whether it comes to climate finance, or any of the core activities that were supposed to be fulfilled under these frameworks that we had. Paris Agreement, as most of you may know, and you mentioned that Radhima and I think Kasia and myself have been to Paris COP, was adopted in 2015. We are 5 years down the Paris Agreement adoption. Still, the rule book of the Paris Agreement has not been operationalized. Without getting into jargon, this essentially means that we do not have a currently agreed global methodology on how we can implement the Paris Agreement. It was supposed to be finalized this year, but now the COP has been moved to 2021 in November again, so there is a 1 year of lack of time again. And where we are, therefore, at the moment is a critical time in history. We are about to unset a time reaction, which will not, which is not something that we can come back from. And this is where role of young people becomes important. It is very important that children and youth, or youth, whoever are in this call here, or any of the decision makers, any of the adults, that you see young people beyond as communication assets or as ornamental value. You shouldn't be having children or young people in the panel just because you think that it is a cool thing to do or they look nice in photos. You're engaging a generation which is going to live through the impacts of policies that you're making today. Whether your NDCs have 50% carbon emission reduction or 20% carbon emission reduction, it is the children of today that are going to be implementing those NDCs. It's the children of today that are going to be living with those impacts. So their participation of young people, whether that means a political participation, whether that means participation in the design in national levels, or whether that simply means empowering their community through education, through capacity building, by mandating vocational trainings on environmental aspects, is very crucial. This is something that cannot be substituted, because you have to build that institutional knowledge, you have to build that institutional setup for this current generation in order to be able to take action, which is what something that we do within Plan for the Planet and the UN Major Group for Children and Youth as well, in our role as the broad formal youth constituency that helps facilitate engagement of young people in the UN processes directly through to the decision makers. And it is done in a way that it is youth led. That means It is not up to the UN, it's not up to the governments to handpick whichever youth they want, to handpick whoever they want as youth representatives, because youth representatives and youth movements have to be self-organized. They have to be driven by the young people, where young people have a say in how they organize themselves, how they act, and how they bring their voices to the table. And my message to you on World Environment Day, because the theme of this World Environment Day, as you may know, is for nature, under the campaign Time for Nature and biodiversity. It is that we are really at a point where we are nearing to next mass extinction. IPCC report has been clear. It is no more about whether or not we can save. It is about how much you can save, whether you can conserve 30% of biodiversity or you can conserve 50% of biodiversity. And these are not the choices that the current generation needs to be facing. And we have to step up and take action immediately to save our animal relatives, to save our fellow children and youth, and also communities that are already facing these impacts. So wherever you are, it is not very small. You're not so small to not make a difference. Everyone in their own capacity can make a difference, and young people already do, even if it means doing simple behavioral things or talking to your community, your family about all of these problems. It is very, very essential in whatever you're contributing through. This is school, Jindal School of Environment and Sustainability. You are yourself already, if you're enrolled in this learning and you're part of this, for lack of better terms, privileged group, which actually gets to have access to this kind of education on environmental topics, which many young people across the globe do not. So I would encourage you to utilize this opportunity in a way that you're able to empower not just yourself, but also people that come after you, and also your peers, and you become multipliers of change makers in the respective societies that you're at. I'll stop here, Harsh, and thank you so much for having me again.
Thank you, Yugratna. You have definitely explained it very well. Obviously, the negotiations which have been time and again and again and again, they were keep happening since 1992, or the 1972 Stockholm Declaration came, and after that Rio came, and now these conferences one after the other, but they are just opening more doors and for the problems which will going to be faced by the youth generation. There is one question specifically for you from Meenu from Kochi. She just specifically wanted to ask you that what was your inspiration or major driving force to work specifically on climate change issues? Can you unmute?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear.
I'm unmuted.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm saying thank you very much for this question. And indeed, the answer to this is both in part personal in nature and part also a sheer matter of luck, because my school that I was in used to have this environmental club that I eventually got involved in. So what drove me, there are specific instances when I was growing up, especially when I was 9 and 10 years old, in my school life. And I remember the current city that my parents live in at the moment, Lucknow city. That was the first time we actually came there in order to, because we are moving from one city to Lucknow. And I remember on the highway that you have in the road to Lucknow, there were hundreds of big trees with their trunks, chopped out just because they were expanding that highway. And that was something I remember seeing as a very young person and feeling that this is not right. This is not right. You should not be doing this, and getting very emotional about it. So that was one of those moments. And then there were similar moments because my paternal grandmother, she comes from, or she lives, she used to live in Sonbhadra, which is one of the biggest coal mines in India. And over the years, I have seen that city transform from, having beautiful ponds and landscapes to becoming almost a ghost town and a city that you cannot recognize. And this is something that has happened while I was growing up. And these are some of the, instances that drove me to take action. Obviously, there was some, as I mentioned, it was also a matter of luck, because the school that I was attending in used to have environmental clubs where we used to get involved. And then eventually there were some international conferences that took place in which I was very lucky to get funded. And that's how, all of this journey started. Thank you. Thank you, Harsh.
Thank you so much for sharing your experience, and thank you so much for sharing that what motivated you at so young age, and you are continued your climate change journey, and you will continue to do so I think by having you on this panel, definitely so many youths in India are watching you and probably getting more inspiration and sharing the same passion. Thank you, Yugratna, once again. Yeah, now I will request Radhima to start the session.
Yeah.
Yeah, Radhima, can you turn on your video?
So I'm so sorry, I can't turn on my video because it's like my laptop is
That's all.
turned off. So I'm just like getting connected through my phone. So yeah, I'm so sorry for that.
No, that's all right. You go ahead.
Yeah, so I would say what Miss Yogaratna has said, I totally agree with that because it's like it's been since when I started my activism because what I is saw was like there's been because I started in 2017 like way before Greta started and way before this movement came into a race. So at that time I really didn't like have that much support and everything from others for my activism basically. So what I used to do is like after when I did my petition in 2017 against the government of India, I just came back into my daily life, like having my like doing my schools and my tuitions and everything. What the children's basically what a 9-year-old basically does at their like in their daily life. But at the same time, when my petition was there going on, like the hearings were going on, I kind of saw like that there's been like nowadays there's been more youth that are coming up and they have been doing a lot more things, like not only just like doing petition is like sufficient, because when I was younger, so I got an idea from my dad that because I really wanted to do something to protect the environment and my future. So my father gave me an idea or advice that I can do, or I can do my petition. And specifically I was not really kind of satisfied with what government was doing, and I wanted a change in their working kind of style and their policies, or I wanted them to follow the rules and norms properly. And also as they signed the Paris Agreement, I wanted them to work on it properly and on ground, because we have been seeing like government have started so many projects, like it's been many and many projects and campaign that's been started by the government, and there's been many initiatives that has been taken by the government. But if you'll see their reports online, like on paper, the work has been going on very nicely and very properly. It would if someone would see the report, if someone would only see the reports on paper and not the work on ground, they would feel like the government is doing so much to protect the environment. But still, scientists have been saying that India is going to be one of the most vulnerable of climate change and global warming. So it's kind of, people will kind of get confused at why each and everyone has been saying the same thing, and the activist has been acting like in India the streets, and we have been saying that the government is somewhere lacking in doing their business properly. So but if we'll see, because all like the things that have been going on, the government has been doing I would say great work on paper. But if whenever you'll come, people will see the ground reality, at that time they'll came to know that what's really happening. Because I'd like to share an incident, because it's like Namami Gange project, like here in Haridwar, they basically planted sort of approximately thousands of trees like uh, near Ganga River. So I went there. So I was really having an documentary shoot. So I went to a place. And when we were going into kind of area with more kind of environmentally background, so I found a place where it was a kind of squared area, fenced properly, and there was a board lying down, and it says that Namami Gange project, this is a Namami Gange project. There's been many, we would say, well-known people, we would say well-known face people came there to inaugurate the program. They planted the trees, and they approximately planted thousands of trees, and it's been initiative taken by the government So it was like board, it was having 2019 written over there, and I went there like in 2020. So when I saw the board like driven down, so the thing what I was able to see in the whole fenced area was just a like kind of tiny branch with a little one leaf, and that what just like that was all that was left there. Like out of thousands of trees there was only one leaf which was left there. So it's kind of disappointing thing for me, because it's like government have been doing these work from a long time, and it also took us like it also took them kind of it also took them kind of money for like bringing the trees, planting them and all that stuff. But it was usually we'd say it was just waste of money, because like none of the tree or sapling really survived. So this is what has been happening, or this is what has been done by the government, I would
Uh,
say.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Ridhima, you're definitely right. Like basically how you have explained that, like the rules or the laws, or even the government policies, sometimes they are nothing bigger than a paper tiger.
Yeah.
So, and we have obviously been seeing that, like these examples throughout your experience and even my experience during my education and my fieldwork experience. And with
Mm-hmm.
respect to tree plantation and afforestation, basically these things government sometimes forget that, like when you plant a tree or when you're doing afforestation, it does not mean that you just get any plant or any species and you just put it out there and just plant it. It may not be a native to that land or that, like that soil, whatever the species or the plant species which is native and which that would actually thrive in that locality or the area would actually benefit in the longer generation. So how you went back in 2020 and you saw there was, like not even a leaf, or like just branches were there from all the all the plantation done by government, may be the reason because they did not properly consider the locality or the native species. And that's why, like these things are happening. I'm more concerned that like what basically motivated you to file a case against the government at the NGT, and could you share your, like, because you are just like 12-year-old, and like how was your experience going to National Green Tribunal, seeing judges, lawyers, like advocating, so all these things, like probably it was very new for you. So if you may put some light on it, it would be
Mm-hmm.
like very helpful here.
Yeah, sure. So I would say I was 5 when a devastating flash flood occurred at my home state, Uttarakhand. That was the Kedarnath flood. So during that flood, basically there was a huge destruction that the whole Uttarakhand has been faced, because there's been a lot of tourists, a lot of local people died because of that flood. A lot of like agricultural area and towns and villages got destroyed because of the flood, and many children even lost their parents' homes and everything else that they had. And there was a like huge loss, if we would say, for the whole state and for the people living over there. So I kind of saw all those footages on TV, and usually when my mom and my dad used to read newspaper, they used to have a conversation about the thing. So they were kind of my dad and mom was kind of having a conversation about the flood. So I suddenly thing came in my mind that why this kind of flood would have happened, because since when I saw the drastic, like when I saw the visuals of the place, I was just like so terrified, and I didn't wanted to face that kind of flood in my lifestyle. And really wanted to stop these kinds of activity, because I really felt very bad for those kids and for those people who lost everything that they had. So I came to know that the flood basically occurred because of, it's basically an effect of climate change and global warming. And it's global warming has been increasing very rapidly because of our emissions. So at that time, I was really kind of confused by the phenomena that we would say like the emissions of people is like changing the temperature of this entire earth, because I was confused that how can our emissions like riding cars, running factories, and like cutting forest areas and doing all this destruction is somewhere can change the environment, the temperature of such a big earth. So I was really confused. So I started asking questions to my parents about the thing, and I really wanted to know more and more as I came to understand the things. So my mom basically made me understand about the thing, what is global warming, what is climate change, and how it's having how bad it's going to impact us in the future, and how no one is really not taking their initiative, or the people are not really taking this thing seriously. They have been busy in their whole kind of world, in their jobs, in having luxurious life, and in basically enjoying their life right now, but they really don't know that somewhere what they are enjoying, what they are doing, their emissions, which is somewhere giving them a comfortable life, is going to affect their like children's and their grandchildren's in their future. So I really kind of get scared when I came to know that, oh, my future is in stake, and the things can get so worse that we would like kind of struggle. We would struggle to survive on this planet. We would struggle to sustain on this planet. So I really wanted to save my future, because after that, when I started imagining that what could really happen. So because I read like there's been a lot of forest clearances given by the government. So I just kind of thought that if like government would cut like trees like this only in a kind of bulk way, without even thinking about how kind of bad impact it's going to have on us. So one day it would happen that children's might, like the coming generation, and the like children who would born like way before, like after some decades, they would go like in a museum to see how, because like right now we go in a museum to see fossils of dinosaurs and everything. They would go like in museum to see how a tree look likes, and how the world would look like with trees, because there would be no trees left. Through my imagination, it's like we know, of course, we can't sustain on this planet if there would be no tree. But at the same time, these kind of nightmare I had when I was a kid, and I guess most of the children who are aware about climate change and global warming would have. And I also get tense that if like the air quality has been getting worse and worse day by day, so it might happen that one day, as we go to a grocery store for buying like vegetables and our like daily need and daily use things, what will happen, like we'll go to grocery store or to a store basically to buy oxygen cylinders, because it would become one of our very important thing for our lives. So I
Yeah,
really didn't want this kind of destruction. So that's why I kind of initiated to do the petition at like National Green Tribunal against the government of India, because of their inaction and not following the rules and norms of environment, and not implementing the Paris Agreement on ground, basically.
thank you so much, Ridhima. You are definitely right. Like how we go to zoos or like go to basically forest reserves in order to see tigers, because like India, and like whenever we visit any tiger reserve or any forest reserve, the one thing which
Mhm,
comes to anyone or everyone's mind that they want to spot a tiger. But I think
mhm,
maybe when you will be like after 10 to 20 years, or like probably 30 years down the line, when you will be going to these forest reserves, the tiger would have been replaced by elephant, or maybe a species which is now thriving but may not be in the future. But one thing is
mhm.
sure, that like government inaction is part of not just India, but I think many developing nations. And
Yeah.
the only hope which I see, that when government is not acting, but the youth themselves taking the government to the courts, and courts will of course the judges and the courts will see that the youth is coming to the court, and this is a new scenario altogether. Millennia is taking the law like in their like and approaching the court in order to remove the inactions done by the government. So hopefully court will definitely make a way for you guys. And I think the uh, sooner or later governments will also need to understand the fact and make youth into the decision making, as well as involve them in the climate change engagement, in order for the better future and the sustainable future for all. Thank you, Ridhima, for joining us. Now I will request Kasia to start her session.
Thank you, Harsh, and thank you, Radhima, to share also your nightmares and your everything that moved you. I would say it's very difficult for us to have no tree in Earth, but has happened before that societies in the past collapsed because of this. Like there's a very interesting book that I recommend to you all that is Collapse from Jared Diamond. And one of the stories that he mentions is the story of the Easter Island that collapsed after one of the things that happened was that they cut the last tree. So that this happened before, but of course, it was a small island. They were very far from everyone. But the author provokes us saying that right now, as a Earth, we are this small island in the universe. You don't know any other society or alien society that would help us if something happens. So we, in a larger scale, right now we are the Easter Island about to cut our last tree. And he says, like, what? He was wondering what the man that cut the last tree thought when they did that, because it was the last tree, and then like they got like a huge environmental disasters and collapsed their society. So it's interesting to see that it looks not rational to do so, but it was done in a smaller scale, and now we are advancing very fast to do this in a much larger scale. But I want to thank you all and Harsh for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. I hope you have a lot of success with these new courses, and the more Indian youth take the leadership, because India, like Brazil, we are both huge countries we are highly impacted by climate change. We can be among the most vulnerable countries, but at the same time, we are leading emitters, so we can do something in a global scale. Of course, we have to consider what the negotiations jargon says, like the CBDR, which is the common but differentiated responsibilities. As emerging or developing countries, we were not historically the main responsible for climate change, so that we need to get investments and supports, like transfers of technology. But at the same time, right now, we have a huge impact, and we can do something and push. And as we are still developing, we can choose a new pathway. We don't have to replicate what Europeans did before, like to rely heavily on fossil fuels and everything that we saw that took us there. But then, like, we can choose like to go like further through another way. So that's what we hope so. But talking about the title of this event, which is very interesting, much has been talked about, like the millennials generation. And one thing that is very odd and particular of our generation, that we are the first generation that saw two global financial crises, like within their working life. So some of the millennials, they were at university or school during the financial crisis of the Lehman Brothers, and they were impacted by that, because when they left university or school, they could not find a job in many countries. And now we are about to head to another financial crisis because of the coronavirus pandemics. So we are very affected by that, and we live in a world that is in disruption. And similarly to Brazil and India, we as young people are the most affected demographics by climate change. In the youngest you are, the more affected you are. I am the oldest among you probably on this call. And there's a very interesting concept of a Brazilian journalist that she was talking about the greatest generation and movement as the first generation without hope. And it's a very strong concept, because she mentions that in the story of pretty much capitalism, like, it's built in the belief that the future will be better than the past. That's why we have credit in the banks, like, because banks expect that our future will be better, so you can take a loan and then you pay back. But the greatest generation and the youngest you are, like the more so, they are growing in a society that they don't feel that their future will be better than their parents, and that's very sad. And I'm sorry to hear your testimony about your nightmares and about how you feel to see that, because I remember when I was your age or even younger, I started working on climate change more than 10 years ago, but then like I was already at university. When I was like a teenager, I expected my future to be better. And even when I started working on climate change, I thought we would do something, because people were getting more conscious about it. So, but at the same time, like we are the best equipped to lead change. We have the tools, we know how to work in networks better than previous generations. And that's the focus of Youth Climate Leaders, on how young people can lead this change. Talking about the current situation, we are living a pandemic in English, which could be just a small example of the social disruption that climate change can cause. So people are already complaining about staying at home. There's huge economic losses, and people like the most vulnerable are the ones that are disproportionately being affected by what is happening right now. And that's so for climate change. But the worst thing is that climate change, we cannot find a vaccine for climate change. And it's not going to affect only health or not only agriculture and not only one country. And we cannot close our airports to stop it. So it's a unprecedented challenge that we can only solve as a global community. And it's sad to see that this pandemic might be strengthening the nationalism in a way that I don't care about the other nations. They can die. I will close my airport and that's enough. But that will not help you with climate change. You can be the largest country in the world, the wealthiest country in the world. If things get bad, as I often say, it doesn't matter if you are on the first class of Titanic, we'll sink at some point. Of course, you may have free food for a while and it will take more time to reach you. And unfortunately, those that are more vulnerable and have less responsibility about what is happening are the ones that will be affected most and sooner by climate change. And this also includes young people and the future generations, because people that were not born yet, people that will be born in 2050, if we don't succeed, they will be the ones like most impacted, because they will be born in a country without hope or in a world that is in disruption. And we have like this decade to do something about it. We still have time, but we cannot be hopeful in a way that is responsible. Like we should sound the alarm, and as we saw with the coronavirus pandemic, that within like few months, people changed totally their habits, and countries were able, some better than others, to do something. I hope that this can teach us something about climate change and focus our attention to this huge challenge. And talking about a little bit about the cause of the pandemics, there are some similarities with climate change, because not very we haven't seen much on news about it. But if we track the cause of this pandemic and other ones, they are really related to the consumption of animals at some point, like either wild animals, as is the coronavirus pandemics or the Ebola pandemic, or like industrial animals be raised in an industrial way. So, and at the same time, like agriculture, forestry, and other land use is responsible for 1/4 of emissions on climate change. So perhaps like it's time for us to consider what we eat in some way, and to avoid pandemics, to decrease emissions. And this is one example. And now people are doing more home office, which can help to reduce emissions in cities, because you don't need to commute and even less by car every day to your office. You could avoid that. And I hope people with have more time to reflect on those issues. And as history teaches us, after pandemics is very common to have huge transformations in the society, not always for the best. I have to stress. But at the same time, a lot of environmentalists are saying that the pandemic was good because emissions dropped. But it's not the case, because once it's never good to have so many people being killed, and most the vulnerable ones to begin with. And even like this apparent benefit of like having the pandemic is not like something that we can take for granted, because emissions, after the 2008 crisis, financial crisis, we can see the emissions catching up soon if we don't change economic incentives and policies that make us behave that way. So as we could see on the streets of Hong Kong, where people were talking about it before hitting us in other countries, we cannot go back to normal. because normal was precisely the problem. So that's a very important thing. I think now we are in the threshold moment that we can and we should organize ourselves to move further, not back to what we had, because what we had is an unequal world. We have like a ecological collapse in place. So we should take this opportunity as we build up our societies post COVID-19. We should have what they call a sustainable recovery. And few countries in Europe are teaming up to make a commitment for a European Green New Deal. And I think in India and in Brazil, we should press. Unfortunately, it's not likely that we might have national leadership on that, but we should press no matter what, and also on local and state levels, and do our part. And one thing about it that is very interesting is that youth are more open to those radical changes that are needed. And a very small example: when I was at the Brazilian Forum on Climate Change, we were like organizing recommendations for the president and doing a high-level work with more than 400 organizations. And older government officials were talking about the intensification of livestock as something to be done to curb climate change, or even official departments that project that the livestock in Brazil will be 300 million cattle, which is like a huge increase from our existing amount by 2050. But at the same time, in that very same year, last year, Beyond Meat was like the best deal of NASDAQ, with an IPO that had made history. And we see during the pandemics in the US, oat milk increased sales by more than 400%. So we see that we as young people, we are more likely to question our habits, and instead of doing just small changes, we are pushing for radical change that are needed, because to solve climate change, it's not enough not to use plastic sacks when you go to supermarket, which is important, but we have to do more radical and structural changes. And from my work with youth climate leaders and my personal experience, I see that we are more open to that. So in addition to protesting and holding our leaders accountable, YCL was built to train young people and connect you with opportunities and networks on climate change, so that you can start your career in the field and start taking action, because we will need millions and billions, hopefully, of people worldwide focusing their careers and their lives in this biggest challenge of this century. So thank you for the invitation.
Yeah,
and I
thank
hope
you so
to
much,
see
Kasia.
you soon, like in person, or like taking action in leading projects and in India and elsewhere.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Kasia. Let me just introduce Lisibriya. Hi, thank you for joining us today. She's an 8-year-old Indian climate activist and founder of the Child Movement. She's also the youngest green activist in the world since 6 years old. And she's known for her voice about the need for immediate action to combat climate change. She dropped out of her school in February 2019 to protest every week in front of Parliament to pass a climate law in the parliament by addressing the Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Member of Parliament. She is the youngest speaker at the United Nations in the history of the world. She traveled over 32 countries and have won many prizes, amongst India Peace Prize, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam Children Awards, Nobel Children Citizen Awards 2020, and Global Child Prodigy Award 2020. Lisibriya, I'll get back to you in some time. Thank you so much, Kasia, for the beautiful session. Definitely, I agree that the issues which we are facing here in India are pretty much similar in Brazil also. And the government's role also are pretty much towards, like, if you have Amazon rainforest, then we have a lot of like forest land, but the land used by the government for non-forest purposes is keep on happening at a very high level, and the government is not doing anything. Actually, they are like promoting it. And in the same way, how Bolsonaro during his government, he's like basically selling off the Amazon land as to private corporations and private people in order to like have utilize it for whether for agriculture or for private purposes, but basically not for environment for their natural purpose, which is like, to have the rainforest as it is basically. And it is like, obviously we will need a radical change in order to like if the youth wants to like have a beautiful and a sustainable future. Otherwise, like if we leave just on the government, then obviously nothing is going to work out. But I'm pretty sure that you have been working with the YC project, and you probably have motivated so many youth throughout the South America. And I think you probably like, I would like India or the General School of Environment and Sustainability would love to host you here in person, and would like, love that if you share some of your experience through the Indian youth and kids also. There is one specific question to you, Kasia. So this question is from this question. Yeah, so the Amazon conservation is a big issue. Do you think Brazil is doing enough to save and conserve the world's largest green cover?
Well, we have to answer this question, we have to separate what is Brazil. Brazil is not the national government, but the national government is not doing enough. And at the same time, like indigenous communities, activists, and riverine communities in the region, they are doing more than they even should. They are taking risks, oftentimes like risking their lives to try to push for the conservation. Unfortunately, we have seen like deforestation increasing in Brazil together with a financial crisis. So it's not even like using the excuse that this is generate economic benefits. It's like deforestation for private use, like Harsh mentioned. It's not, and even sometimes it's just land grabbing. Like they are deforesting and they claim the land for them, or livestock is one of the main reasons, because they put few cattle there and say that now the land is theirs. But at the same time, like I think the international community is more aware. Like the European Union, Netherlands blocked the deal with Mercosur, which is like our regional economic group, because of this, and even the U.S. with Trump, like legislators there are not allowing to increase economic deals with Brazil. But this shows how political leadership is important, because if the leader of the country send a message that is okay to deforest the Amazon, or in other cases like to be misogynist or other things, like more people will do that. And unfortunately, without the basics for the Amazon, the last thing that you should do at least is to have a monitoring of the deforestation and punishment. This is the basics, and this is not being done. And what we are having a live today on YCL, and next week a webinar about the Amazon. And there are many organizations that are investing on what they call giving more opportunities to local communities, so they don't need to deforest. But deforestation at a large scale is made by rich people, not like indigenous communities or riverine communities. So we need like the protection of the government to avoid that. At the same time, that we give opportunities through the bioeconomy to use the biodiversity in a sustainable way for the communities there, so they can leave poverty in a sustainable way. Because if you don't have another alternative, you might accept a job to deforest the Amazon, because this will give you money to feed your family. So we have to break the two cycles. We have to punish the richest people that do that and they profit from that, and at the same time give opportunities to local communities and other governments and local governments as well. Within Brazil, they succeed on doing so. So we hope that we can adjust our political issues to go back, and we will need to reforest the Amazon otherwise it will turn into a savanna, and São Paulo will turn into a desert.
Certainly, Kasia, thank you so much. I definitely agree with you that involvement of indigenous people, indigenous communities throughout the world is very necessary in the age of climate change, because they are the one who knows how to tackle it with their local and traditional knowledge. But I think it is taking time for international corporations and countries like US and UK to understand the fact and admit it, that like even though they are not educated from top universities or did not go to college, but they are master when it comes to tackling the climate change. Now I would like to invite Lisibriya to start her session. Lisibriya, can you hear us?
Yes.
Hi.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Hi everyone. I'm Lisibriya Kangusam. I'm 8 years old. I'm an Indian climate activist and the founder of the Time Movement. Thank you so much, OWP, General Global University, for inviting me here to speak in this program. Coronavirus is the testing time for our leaders, and it is the testing time for our nature and human beings. 2020 is a very crucial year to decide the future of our planet. But due to this COVID-19, it weakened our movement but not our spirits. I had to cancel lots of my planned schedules, events, programs, activities, campaign, etc. But I still continue to plant trees nearby roads, places to my home. People always tell me that you are too young to get involved in such activism, but I prove them that age doesn't matter to make a difference. I'm big or small, it doesn't matter. I am a good child. I'm strong, I'm smart, I'm intelligent, I'm brave. Many children and youth inspire from me. Few months back, I went to Madrid, Spain, in the month of December for 2 weeks to attend the United Nations Climate Conference 2019, where everyone known as COP25 means Confrena parties. I went there to tell the world leaders that this is the time to do action, and it is a real climate emergency. They must act now to save our planet and our future. I've also met United Nations Secretary General and Greta Thunberg during that program, and I've met many world leaders in there. I've also heard many speeches from our leaders that they will do this, will do that, will tell them not to do, will hear all your voice, will. But at the end, COP25 was failed. Just waste of time and money spent for 2 weeks in one of the most expensive cities of the world. Our leaders failing us for the last 25 years, even before I was born. When I was born, our leaders already met 16 times in the COPs, and the world already knew about the bad effects of climate change. Our policymakers from around the world just get here every year in these COPs and do nothing concrete for our future. And also in the World Economic Forum 2020, we told our leaders to abandon the fossil fuel economy. Let's stop telling something and doing something. Children are more smart and more concerned than our leaders. What we want is climate action now without wasting any more time. You can just see in Arctic and Himalayas how icebergs are melting twice as fast as ever before, and how sea level are increasing, and our Earth is becoming very hot. I'm worried about the future of our planet, and many biodiversity hotspots become climate hotspots now. You can just see in Delhi how air pollution is so dangerous, and even children can't move out of the home. I'm worried about the health of the school children and small babies. Government announced that there would be holidays for 3 days and again for 5 days, but this is not the solution. Our leaders are just busy in blaming each other instead of finding a long-term solution. They are just telling the speech. They're not doing any action. I want our world leaders to do more action. Otherwise, our future and our planet would be dying soon. They must act now to save our planet and our future. That's why I invented a symbolic device called Sukifu. Sukifu means survival kit for the future. With the support of IP Jammu, Professor Chandan Gosan, we have developed that device. My device, Wikifu, and me want to send a strong message about the environmental degradation and resilience to the whole world. It will also keep attention to the world leaders, scientists, experts, pollution control board who are responsible for our safe future. My device will also give fresh air to our lungs, and it will also save our health from high air pollution. I'm only a child yet, but I know all the money spent on war if we spend on finding environmental answers. Ending poverty and giving education, then what a wonderful places Earth would be. Millions of people are planting millions of trees to save our planet and our future. But some leaders are destroying our beautiful planet and our beautiful future. This is not fair. And also the hopes, the dreams of millions of children like me in the wars, losing their parents or children becoming homeless due to danger of wars. So I would like to appeal to all our world leaders to stop wars and conflict immediately in the interest of millions of children of the world. When I was just around 6 years old, I got a chance to attend one United Nations disaster conference in Mongolia. It was my life-changing event. I get many inspiration and knowledge from the people who tell the speech during that program. And I have met many world leaders in there. After returning back from Mongolia in 2018, I started my organization called the Child Movement to call the world leaders to take immediate climate action to save our planet and our future. Greta Thunberg greatly influenced me in February 2019. Since then, at Parliament House of India, I'm standing and I'm telling to our Honorable Prime Minister of India, Mr. Narendra Modi and our MPs to pass the climate change law as soon as possible from the paper to become action. If they pass the climate change law, then we can control the carbon emission and greenhouse gases. I drop out my school since February 2019 due to my protest every week in the Parliament House of India. I request to all our government to include climate change as a compulsory subject in our school education curriculum in India and every part of the world. Children must plant minimum 10 trees every year to pass their final examination. In India, we are 350 million students. If 350 million students plant minimum 10 trees every year, then we would plant 3.5 billion trees. Trust me, India will be green in after 5 years. Animals are dying due to plastics. So please do not throw garbage or plastics on streets, ocean, river, or seas, or anywhere else. I have a small message to all the children of the world. Children must tell the parents that they shouldn't cut trees. If they cut one tree, then plant minimum 10 or 20 trees. Don't use car or bikes every time. Children must tell the parents that they should walk if it's nearby. I'll fight until my goal achieved. We are unstoppable and another world is possible and the change is possible. Today, I want to share something with everyone living in this world from our little earth. We all know we are facing a pandemic on one side and flood, drought, heat waves, cyclones, etc. on another side. Now this is the time to wake up. This is the time to open your eyes. This is the time to send your children and grandchildren to fight for their survival and for their own future. The best gift parents can give to their children is not a beautiful house, expensive cars, lots of money. The best gift parents can give to their children is a beautiful planet. To give this planet, you have to empower yourself. If you can empower yourself, then you can empower your family. If you can empower your family, then you can empower your neighborhood. If you can empower your neighborhood, then you can empower your community. If you can empower your community, then you can empower your state. If you can empower your state, then you can empower your country. If you can empower your country, then you can empower the whole world. Empowerment means independent. Independent means freedom. Freedom is when you can protect your land and environment. Freedom is when you can protect your children's future and culture. Freedom is when no one can discriminate you on basis of caste, creed, color, sex, or any other differences. Freedom is when you can read and write. Freedom is when you are out of hunger. Freedom is when we are all together in this fight. Fight for your freedom. Thank you, Jai Hind. Sanaleva Manipurna Yatri. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Lisibriya. It is so inspiring to listen to you, and you are so motivated towards tackling and battling climate change. Of course, like world leaders, sooner or later, they are not going to hide always behind the curtains. Sooner or later, they will have to come out and they will have to listen what youth is saying, not just in one country, but across the globe. Thank you for your beautiful speech. There's one specific question, Kate. Would you like to? So you must have heard about the elephant, which was like basically the pineapple elephant incident, which happened in Kerala. The female elephant
Oh
which
yes,
died.
the bomb blast.
Yeah,
The
the
bomb
bomb
blast.
blast. What are your reaction to that?
I'm so sad that people are also hiding the bomb on pineapple. The animals can can eat the fruits. They should be careful, and it's really a bad thing. And inside that mummy elephant, there was a baby inside it. It can blast. I'm so sad. I was so scared. And it is really a very sad thing. People should not do. So I want to give them a message that they shouldn't do this type of things. If they eat that pineapple, just imagine that if they be that mother elephant and and they're having a baby inside it, just like that, and they eat the pineapple, then how can it feel? They will die. They should feel something like that, and they should feel shy. What you're doing this type of things with animal, it's really a shy thing.
Definitely, Lisibriya, this was very barbaric incident, and I feel like this basically, like made me like stop believing on humans. Like I feel sad sometimes that I'm also a human. Like how can one do this such barbaric and terrible act to a species which is basically unharmful and like cannot even speak or raise their voice? I would like to, Ridhima, are you around? Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ridhima, there was a question specific to you that there seems to be a great concern on the level of administration only blaming nature for the Uttarakhand flood. Disaster is not enough. What measures do you think we need to take in order to get safe from such disasters to get so that these disasters should not be repeated and should not do the damage what the previous flood did to the Uttarakhand state?
I would only say the nature, like the flood, it's a natural thing, and the nature will take its course. The thing what we can do as person is like we can limit our emissions. We can see like what we are doing, what we are consuming, and how our daily life is somewhere impacting the environment. And at the same time, it's the duty of government to look after that, how their deeds and what they are doing, how bad it's impacting to the environment, because somewhere the whole ecosystem has been changing, and these all like floods and droughts are the effect of that. So the most important thing is like as person, as what a person can do at their personal level is like we can just reduce our emissions. We can see what we are consuming, what we are wearing, or how our daily lifestyle is somewhere impacting the climate change. We should reduce our emissions, and at the same time the government should see like the things like as we saw like during the lockdown, as this lockdown became an example for the whole world, that the whole destruction that's been happening to the environment, we are the cause for that. And instead of taking actions that will benefit the environment, what they are doing is just like they are giving forest clearances for economical growth. So that is what they should avoid. And they should see like the actions that they are taking, like construction of dam is also one of the cause for flood, and deforestation also is one of the cause for floods. So it's like they should see, like government should see the like how their work and how their activities for having an economical wealth for for the economical growth, how it's impact, how badly it's impacting the environment. And they should do the work in a scientific way. And I guess like doing by like doing or taking like having all these things and keeping all these things in mind, we can somewhere combat climate change, and we can somewhere can reduce these natural disasters to come over.
Thank you, Radhima, for your opinion and answer. There is one question for you, Kasia. So there was an Arctic oil spill today, which happened in the Russian region. Do you think the global interference is required for that?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Yeah, it was not the first, not the last. This I did international relations as a major, so we've been discussing how the global community can respond in that case. Right now, as sovereign states, the United Nations doesn't have the power or legitimacy to really operate as a government, and that's being a major issue, because when something like this happens, what is the police of the world? We don't have it. We don't, and if it's a strong state like Russia, it's even more difficult to as like the whole world community to do so. But one thing that the historian Yuval Harari is being talking more and more, like the challenge of the 21st century, most of them are global. We cannot solve this with the UN we have right now, or with the paradigm of the nation states as fully sovereign and can do whatever they want. Because what they are doing, and what Brazil is doing as well in the Amazon, what India may do in other things, will affect the whole world. So we need at some point to have this as have a way to respond, and invite most of those countries that are choosing a nationalist approach, and they want to be by themselves and not be accountable for the actions. There should be a way to in a pacific way to constrain that liberty. About climate change, there's been talking a lot about perhaps a climate club. The leaders for climate change start building a kind of a European Union for climate change. So everyone that is complying will have economic advantage, will have sharing of resources. We saw this with the coronavirus pandemic. Some, like doctors from all over the world exchanging research and trying to do something together. So I think for the environmental issues, we don't have right now a structure to respond, unfortunately. As a global community, perhaps the Security Council could do something through the UN, and to raise an alert, or like the other countries through the G20 could push Russia to act somehow. But we have the challenge within the next few years to build a multilateral system that is functional for those challenges, that can have exchange of research, so that people will know like the best practices. Like, if Russia learns something with this, they could share with us in Brazil, because we had oil spills before, and we had many mining accidents in the last few years. So there should be like perhaps a world standard to operate with this kind of activities. And at the same time, we should retire fossil fuels and other things that we could improve the way we produce energy. So hopefully we could avoid accidents by also reducing the diesel and oil worldwide. And I hope countries like ours will push towards, because both India and Brazil, we are well equipped to use solar and wind in a high intensity, whereas like we need to push for other countries that rely on oil to be more responsible and stop using as soon as possible.
I would request Radhima and Kasia to share any appeal or a closing remark, basically, which you would like to pass on your message. So I would request Radhima to share it, and then Kasia. Lisibriya has already shared it. Radhima?
Yeah, I would just say like as I would say, or I would ask the whole world leaders that it's been a lot that we all children have suffered, because due to pollution we have seen like small children have been facing, have been like having cancer, and has been facing with diseases like asthma and many like breathing diseases and many of the things. So it's been children have been facing a lot, since we are the one who didn't really contribute to climate change and global warming. And somewhere they have lived their life happily, they have lived a comfortable, and we could say luxurious and healthy life. And what they are now leaving for us only is only destruction, and what they're like leaving us for like only suffering. So I really want them to start thinking that what they are doing, and they should really do they should really keep their words, because it's been like they have been saying, since like the government of India has been saying that they are very crucial about the environment, or they are very active towards the environment, but it's only in the speeches as much as I have seen. So I want them to like mark their works on words and work on ground, and I want them to take to start doing the work and their actions in a scientific way, so that in the future we would also have a place to at least live healthy. Because nowadays if we would say we'll not start taking actions from now and from every level, then in coming decades or in few years what will happen, it's like nowadays like parents do like ask their children like to study hard for having a good future. But if the government will not do their properly, because they have power in their hand, they can really change the whole scenario of being what kind of this is happening right now. So it's very important to start taking actions, because if they'll not start taking action, and if they'll not mark that what they are doing is really harming the environment, then in the coming future we would not, like children would not consider that, oh, I have to become an IPS officer or doctor or somewhere. The children would also would just only think that how I'm going to survive on this planet, and how my future is going to be if this pandemic is not going to get stopped.
Thank you, Radhima. Kasia, to you.
Thank you. With brief, like one thing you mentioned, the meeting I had with President Barack Obama, and I asked him what was his secret to inspire people and do the change, and he said that to inspire people, we should not do things for them, but instead help them to discover their own power. And I think that's very profound, because what you both are doing, Lisibriya and Radhima, is you have discovered your power and you're helping people worldwide to do the same, and that's very beautiful. And unfortunately, a lot of young people are depressed with what is happening. And if we have a lot of information, but we feel we don't have a power to do the change, depression is what will happen to us. So we need to give an alternative for that. And another thing that I like to do with youth climate leaders is always using pop culture to make climate change more like within the reality of people. We did like articles about Game of Thrones and other things, and I really like the Lord of the Rings as a metaphor for times like that. And there is like a moment in the book and in the movie that the wizard, the Gandalf, is talking to Frodo, which is the Hobbit, and Frodo says, I wish it need not have happened in my time. And Gandalf responded to him, so do I, and so do all who live to see such times. But that is not for them to decide. What we have to decide, all we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to us. And I think this is a final message, because I'm really sorry that you both girls are passing through that. Like, it's not fair that you have to be like in confronting this issue like climate change, but at the same time, what we can do is empower ourselves, because we cannot run away. Like, we will have to do something, and you are on the right path, and I hope more Indian youth will follow you, and good luck with the program.
Thank you, Kasia. So definitely, I agree with all three of you, and you, Gratna, as well. So of course, like what I feel, that kids and youth should never have been here fighting the climate change. But on the flip side, this movement will create a generation of people who have internalized environmental consciousness within from the beginning, and this is how they will have the sustainable future for the future generations. We have come to an end of a fascinating discussion. I would like to thank distinguished speakers on behalf of Jindal School of Environment and Sustainability, OP Jindal Global University. I would also like to thank all the participants. We really appreciate your involvement. Please apply for BA in Environmental Studies program at the Jindal School of Environment and Sustainability, and join us in a journey towards a healthy and sustainable future, where we will be discussing climate change and renewable energy, and definitely taking your inputs into that, how we can have or how we can work towards a healthy and sustainable future. I would like to end this session with a native proverb which needs to be reminded in 21st century. We do not inherit the earth from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children. Wish you a happy World Environment Day. Thank you all.